What's good, YouTube? It's me, your boy Scooter, back in another video. Today, let's take a look at the OCG tournaments to see exactly what the heck's going on in their meta game. I mean, obviously, the OCG is a lot different than TCG. They have a completely different ban list. You know, they have Max C being the most prevalent offender. But the thing is, the OCG is a great reference for seeing what decks will actually be good, especially ones that are come out in the sets that they get before us. And also, it's really interesting to see that the OCG is actually just as diverse as the TCG almost right now. There are a lot of different decks that are doing quite well. So we're going to take a look at the CCT Zhongshan 2023, which is a tournament that took place in actually China. They recently got some tournaments happening there. I know they had official support for the game. And this tournament actually was a 2-day event that had 350 people. Now, OCG actually has different events than the TCG. Instead of having large YCSs with thousands of people, they typically only have smaller championships or CSs or CCTs that have around a couple of hundred people, except for obviously in the instance of YCS Japan, which is like a rare occurrence where they actually get like thousands of people. But generally, there are other tournaments that are unofficial have a little less people for to just preface that. So 8 rounds of Swiss day 1, and then top 32 single elimination on day 2. So we can see here actually SINFUL Spoils Fire King is a deck that's been doing very, very well. It actually won YCS Japan, which was the best of 1, and won this event as well. We also have HORUS CENTUR-ION in the 2nd place, and you can see there are a variety of decks here. We see some branded, SILENFORC, the NATURIA as well. NATURIA deck that they have with the tree at 3. Rescue Ace, of course, still a dominant contender in the metagame, even though they got slightly hit on the ban list just to reduce consistency. I believe Airlifter went to 2. Some HORUS decks as well, some Labyrinth in the mix, and some random other Pendulum decks and Grass decks, because they do still have Grass. So the champion here, we see him in all his glory, actually with the Fire King deck. And you can see that it's interesting. The Fire King deck's obviously playing the wanted SINFUL Spoils engine because of the fact that the newest little baby RUNICK is actually a level 1 fire monster. Yeah, Konami really thought this through, so you can actually tutor that out using the original SINFUL Spoils spell card. And they also got a plethora of support in terms of generic fire support. Bonfire is a card that allows you to add a level 4 or lower pyro monster from your deck to your hand. That's coming out, I believe, in one of the side sets in TCG in January. They also have the Prisoner Princess, I believe her name is, who is a generic Link 3 that allows you to resurrect fire monsters from your graveyard, non-targeting. Very, very powerful card. And on top of all of that, this deck is just very, very neat because you can play a lot of non-engine. You can see here there's 3 Ash, 3 Max C, 2 Veilers, 2 Super Polys, 2 Called Bys, 3 Imperms. There's just a lot of room to toss in non-engine, even after your Fire King engine and the SINFUL Spoils engine. And they're actually playing more of the SINFUL Spoils cards, which is really interesting as well. We do get Populous coming out in January in Phantom Nightmare, which is one of the main 1-card combos off of Bonfire, because when you do add it off of Bonfire, you can trigger him to special summon himself and then continue to go off into your combos. So really, really nice that this deck is doing very, very powerfully well. I think it'll definitely be good in the TCG as well, so that's something to just keep aware of on the horizon. And then we have HORUS CENTUR-ION. This is surprising that this deck actually got second, because from what I've seen, this deck kind of fell apart in the OCG. No one really respected it and hasn't been doing too well, but it looks like it actually did decently good here in this larger tournament and got 2nd place. Of course, CENTUR-ION's coming out in the side set Valiant Smashers, which revolves around a 1-card engine, allowing you to make a signature level 12 synchro monster that draws a card. And then on their turn, you can actually make a Crimson Dragon, which goes directly into Archfiend Calamities. So off of 1 card, you can effectively try and lock your opponent out of the entire turn. Really, really interesting there. And the reason why you play the HORUS cards is because, number 1, you can start off, obviously, with the powerful rank 8 Vampire Zombie to try and dig for your CENTUR-ION combo, because there is some kind of consistency issues in this deck sometimes. It's a lot like Castira, where you sometimes don't have enough starters. And on top of that, you could also play the cards like Hope Harbinger if you want, or potentially the Photon Galaxy guy who negates monster effects. But being level 8 is especially useful because their monster is actually a level 4 tuner, and they have a level 8 body that they actually use to go into their signature level 12 synchro monster. But having the HORUS monsters are extra fodder, so you can combine it with the CENTUR-ION Primera to go directly into the level 12, which is a generic synchro 12. So very, very nice that this deck actually might be somewhat relevant in the TCG. So let's wait to see exactly what happens here. Branded decks seem to be doing surprisingly well in the OCG recently as well. Now, bear in mind that the ban list has previously hit Branded very, very harsh. They were not so kind to Branded in the OCG as they were in the TCG. You see Branded Fusion is actually at 1, as well as Lubellion, obviously, when they originally did the ban list to hit all of the Bystials to 1 except Saronir. And also, Branded Opening on top of everything is also at 1. So the consistency of this deck is very, very much so shot, in addition to having just a single copy of Branded Fusion. So it's not like you can actually follow up your play with a second copy if they Omni negate it with something something like Baron de Fleur. But they still do have the branded Expulsion, which is still unbanned, so they are able to kind of make some locks with that. You can see that the Gimmick Puppet is still here in the side deck for going first. Also interesting that they're siding D-Shifter here. I guess it's something that is just so good against the graveyard-based decks, and Brandon doesn't really care as long as you can still play and make like a fusion monster, and also playing the Thrust package with the fusion duplication. So kind of interesting. They're actually taking techniques from the TCG as well. That wasn't something that was previously pioneered in the OCG, rather it's something that I think TCG players started playing. We got Rescue Ace in top 8, which is interesting. Airlifter is obviously at 2 in the recent ban list, but they are still playing the SINFUL Spoils engine, which actually gets better with Populous. I believe that also allows you to off one card, set up your Hydrant. Previously, you know, Witch had to actually send a card, but Populous actually puts herself back onto the Spell and Trap zone, so you can send her with the original SINFUL Spoils. So that's why they're actually playing Bonfire as well, because it becomes a starter for the Rescue Ace deck as well, and upends consistency as well as being an extender. So really, really neat that they're actually going that direction as well. I think TCG players might experiment with that as well. HORUS Chimera is an interesting deck that I've seen a lot of OCG players starting to test. I guess the idea is that with the HORUS, you can actually make a powerful rank 8 before starting your plays. So you can see here that they just go into the Photon guy or go into Zombie Vampire just to dig for your engine. So it's really, really interesting because they kind of have to play other cards to go for the consistency. Because again, Branded Fusion's at 1, so there's no point really playing that engine. And also Pot of Prosperity is only at 1. So a lot of times this deck might just not see the starters that you need to play. So having the HORUS to actually dig for the Zombie Vampire and try and mill a starter is one of the main reasons that they're actually starting to play the HORUS engine from what I've seen. And that is just really, really interesting. You have the option to dig for engine with the HORUS cards, or you have the option to kind of protect yourself with the Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord before starting your plays. Very, very neat idea there. SILENFORC actually came in top 8 as well. This has been doing recently decently good in the OCG. They came top 8, I think, at YCS Japan as well. How this deck works is it's effectively a retrain of the original Skull Guardian in Novok's Prayer in the Tournament Pack 1 and 2, original way back in the OGs. You guys will know what I'm talking about. But more importantly, these cards are really, really interesting because it's a ritual deck that has a lot of pluses basically off of one card. I know this build is not playing the Diviner or the Herald specifically, but off of one Diviner, you can actually go off into your full combo. But I guess they just decided to go for more consistency. Instead, we're playing cards like Nadir Servant, which allows you to send the Herald to then dig for one of your ritual monsters or ritual spells. And it's really, really neat because these cards all search each other and you're able to set up a Skull Guardian, the retrain, which then allows you to add another copy of a ritual monster. And it's basically, you get a lot of pluses. You're able to put some negates onto the field using Skull Guardian, and then you just whittle down your opponent. Of course, we also have Dynamundo, who brings everything back. So it's just a very, very nice deck. I think I really want to test this out. I know Dimensional Barrier, probably heard it a lot, but it's still a really, really cool deck. I love rituals, and this seems really, really neat. So that does it for the first tournament. This is the second tournament I want to quickly talk about. It's actually a Blackluster Soldier normal monster tournament, which is basically a promotion that the OCG has been doing as a part of the 25th anniversary celebration. Is they are actually releasing these normal monsters from the original Yu-Gi-Oh series as trophy cards for players to collect. They're not actually playable in a duel. The first prize card that they actually gave out was a Guy the Fierce Knight, which was a couple of months ago. That was normal monster in a plaque. And now they're giving out a Blackluster Soldier normal monster, which is basically an homage to the original first ever Yu-Gi-Oh Nationals that took place in 1999 at the Tokyo Dome. And the winner actually got a steel Blackluster Soldier normal monster before it was actually printed as a ritual monster. So they're now kind of calling back to that and giving that as a trophy. These are very high impact tournaments. That this one took place in Malaysia, but they are at different countries across the OCG. So really, really neat. And you can see here, there's spread. Obviously, Salamangreat winning is really, really interesting, but you also see HORUS CENTUR-ION again. They got second place at the other tournament as well, but this one's actually a lot smaller. It only has 168 participants as opposed to 350, but that's all right. This is still a sizable tournament, especially for an OCG-based tournament. And we can also see there are a bunch of Rescue Ace and Fire King, Supreme King Magician, NATURIA RUNICK, and Labyrinth. So yeah, a lot of diversity again. First place, they actually had Salamangreat. Really, really cool that this deck actually did well in the OCG. I mean, they do have Maxi, and I would have imagined that this deck is especially hurt by Maxi because you don't really have a lot of lines to pivot. But potentially, maybe you could set up like a SP Little Knight and then just turtle up with your traps. Looks really standard with the Salamangreat of Fire only at 2 copies instead. Kind of interesting there. Side decks is especially interesting because you can kind of get a sense of what good cards might actually be sided in the TCG. Skullmeister being one of them, because this card is actually really good against Silenforcer as well as Fire King. So being able to stop all the effects that activate in the graveyard can actually be a huge choke point for those two decks in particular. And they're also citing Goblin Rider, one of the Goblin Riders called, I believe, Boon the Max Speed, who says, quick effect, you can detach a material from an XYZ monster anywhere on the field during either player's turn, and then special summon this card from your hand or your graveyard. So I'm not exactly sure what deck plays XYZs. I thought it was the Fire Kings like the Runicks, but I'm not sure this actually interacts with them on its own. So guys, if you have any thoughts on how this actually works, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, is it just like a level 3 extender? I don't know. But also Kaiser Coliseum, a card that's been banned in the TCG for like 10 years, is really funny that it's still being cited in the OCG and legal. Third place was SILENFORC, again getting top 8 in this tournament. This deck is definitely good. This version plays the Diviner build, being able to send the Trias guy who can actually come back by tributing the Diviner on the field, and then Diviner's effect will trigger, allowing you to special summon out the copy of Novox, who then gets an effect to add a copy of a continuous spell, and then that continuous spell can then add one of these monsters for you to go full combo. So really, really nice that this deck is seeing some play with Diviner. Guys, pick up your Diviners if you don't have them already. And everything else is fairly standard. Kind of neat that they're playing a bunch of cards to actually send from the extra deck using Nadir's Servant to take advantage of there. And they're also playing the Shadal combo just to summon out the Winda by sending the Apkalone. Top 4 also seeing NATURIA Runick. This card obviously being at 3, the NATURIA Sacred Tree. This deck is more or less dead in the TCG, but I think they definitely copied this from the TCG because this is very effectively a TCG deck. But they only have one fountain, but not that really matters. The deck still does what it does with the 3 Sacred Trees. NATURIA HORUS is another variation of the HORUS. Obviously, they have 3 copies of the tree, so it's really, really nice that you can actually use a HORUS to start going into level 12 synchros like the Legatia synchro right here. And then you can actually go into Calamities as well with the Crimson Dragon on the crackback if you're able to set up the Crimson Dragon on the same turn using Camellia plus searching a copy of the Resurrection NATURIA Blessing, summon up that same Camellia, then use 2 Horse monsters to make Crimson Dragon as well as Legatia. So really, really nice that this deck is kind of a thing, but I don't think it'll be legal or rather good in the TCG because of this card at 1, the tree, of course. They're also playing a copy of the Black Deity Horus, which is kind of cool, and the copy of Stone Wall of the Imperial Tombs, which is a newer card that's actually treated as King Sarcophagus while it's on the table and allows you to add any Horus monster from your deck to your hand. So they're really leaning hard into the Horus paint. Like, this is like almost a full engine, basically. Really, really interesting that they're going so heavy with the Horus just to guarantee that they go into their synchro plays. We have a random Sky Striker deck that somehow snuck into top 8. They have 2 engaged just like us, as well as everything else, basically at full power, but they are kind of playing Thrust with like a bunch of one-ofs, like Pot of Avarice for some reason. Really, really interesting. And then the random copy of the Jammer spell card, or the Forbidden Spell, rather, the one that you discard a spell and it negates a spell. Kind of weird kind of combination. They're playing a lot of cards to set off Thrust, Chain Disappearance, kind of neat, as well as a new Illusion monster that's kind of like a Battle Fader, I suppose. Just really, really weird choices in general. And then really quickly here, we actually have a top 16 Supreme King Magician Zark deck. So we got some Zark support actually in Agov that no one really knows about because everyone just like overwhelmed it and no one thought they would be good. But in the OCG specifically, they do have, of course, Electromite, which does enable some broken combos. But we obviously don't have Electromite access, so I think it's a lot worse or barely playable in the TCG, if anything, from what I've seen. But it's just neat to see how it's different in the OCG, that one card allows them to basically be able to play this deck that goes full combo and spins a bunch of negates on the board, you know, Baron de Fleur. They also have this bad boy, the Starving Venom guy, who also got banned in the TCG for some degenerate FDKs. So yeah, I guess those 2 cards actually do make a significant difference. But yeah, that was about the other interesting deck in this metagame that I've seen from the OCG. So yeah, what do you guys think about the OCG format compared to ours? Let us know in the comments below. Other than that, rate, comment, subscribe, and thanks for checking out my Squidio. We'll see you in the next one.